We're going to talk to a former JAG lawyer coming up after this quick break. I'm Grant Stinchfield. This is the Stinchfield Report on 570 KLIF. You may have heard the news about the United States military cracking down on the sexual assault of women and sexual harassment within its ranks. In fact, the United States military has now said they have a zero-tolerance policy, and God bless them for that. I mean, look, I'm on the board of the Crimes Against Women Conference through the Genesis Women's Shelter here. I'm on the board of New Friends, New Life, a great organization that helps women escape the sex trade industry. And there's nothing I feel more strongly about than making sure that women are not what amounts to being persecuted by being sexually assaulted when they shouldn't be. And so whenever you have a major crackdown like this, there are always other sides to the story. And Brian Bouffard is a former JAG attorney. He travels the country representing military men accused of sexual assault and up for court-martial. And, Brian, I want to thank you for coming on the Stinchfield Report.
Grant, thank you for having me.
So I got to tell you, I'm a little hesitant to even bring you on because I feel so strongly about sexual assault against women. But you say there is a push, and the push is so great that some innocent men are getting caught up in all of this. Is that right?
It is. At the outset, Grant, I've got to tell you, I agree with you, and I think all thinking people have to agree with you when you say that one sexual assault is one too many. I mean, absolutely that's true. What's not being said, though, and what's not being given its proper consideration is the fact that one wrongful allegation or one wrongfully accused person is also one too many. That's kind of what we're dealing with in the environment these days.
Yeah, I mean, there is the statement that you'd rather see a guilty man, go free than send an innocent person to prison.
Right. And I think most people, there's some debate about that, but I think most thinking people would agree with that we need to do what we can to avoid the possibility that innocent people get caught up in the law enforcement net.
Well, there are some statistics out there that suggest that 2% of military rape allegations are false. You cited a review of 556 rape accusations filed against Air Force personnel, and they found that 27% of those women later recanted.
Yeah, and after doing even more analysis, they came up with a figure in that particular study of something around the area of a 60% rate. And I'm not sure that I necessarily credit that, but what I can tell you is the methodology that I've seen in that study and also another study that came up with the number of 41% of false allegations, at least I understand and can appreciate the methodology. The other studies that are being touted these days by some of the senior leadership and certain voices in Congress, I haven't seen any basis to believe that those studies are accurate. Those studies that say, there's only a 2% rate of false allegations. How they would even come up with that number is frankly beyond me, at least at this point.
So what are you seeing as you travel the country? I mean, look, I've covered crime for a lot of years in the media, and every court case I ever went to, the guy said he was innocent.
Sure. And in any individual case, you can't necessarily look at a set of facts. It's oftentimes he said, she said. You're not necessarily going to know in an individual case what happened. And that's why it's so important that the process itself work the way that it's supposed to. So the process, you would think, in not only this crime, but in every crime, is that an allegation is made. It's reported to law enforcement. And law enforcement does an open-minded investigation where they're open to competing theories of what might have happened here. And unfortunately, what we're seeing these days, particularly in the military, is that paradigm is not being followed. There is a huge push to just believe the victim when she or he says that they're the victim, to go ahead and find initially that we have a valid rape case, we have a bad guy, and then everything that law enforcement does is geared towards trying to show that the person they suspect is the bad guy really is the bad guy.
So
that's not the way it should be done.
We're talking with Brian Bouffard, former JAG attorney, and now represents those accused of sexual assault being court-martialed around the country. So what do you attribute that to, Brian? Do you think it's this political push?
It is, and I hate to say that because I don't like to imagine that the halls of the Pentagon and the military is so subject to that, but obviously it is. We've got a big congressional push right now from Senator Gillibrand in New York and Senator Claire McCaskill that are really sounding the drums for the witch hunt atmosphere that we've got going on right now. You've got senior leaders who, if they are even perceived to be less than rabid on this issue, they're not going to get promoted. And we're seeing that across the board.
But, the hard thing is you don't want to send an innocent person to get them court-martialed. But if an allegation is made, you've got to take them seriously. And for so long, critics of the military system would say, hey, women's complaints were pushed under the rug for many, many years.
I think, again, in individual cases, you can probably find some evidence of that. But whether it was an institutional attitude of we're just not going to listen to women when they make an outcry, I don't believe that exists. And I don't believe that has existed, or at least not in any rate that's greater than a similar demographic age-wise.
So
in other words, I don't think there's... Go ahead.
What would you like to see done? Would you like to see a more broader investigation into these cases? Or are you saying they're just kind of, these men are getting swept up in all of this?
Yeah, and I do want to see that. I want to see that in every case that comes across my desk. I love it on those rare occasions when I can look at the investigation and think to myself, wow, this officer or this agent really did a good job. And even when it comes down to good, solid evidence that points against my client, I mean, that's fine. I want them to get to the bottom of it based on what the facts are and where the evidence leads them and not where their political beliefs.
Brian, how often do you see that case come across where you say, wow, this really was a well-done investigation?
Too rarely.
Too rarely.
Far too rarely. I can probably count them on one hand, and I've been doing this for quite a while.
Well, Brian Bouffard, former JAG attorney, we appreciate you coming on the Stinchfield Report and talking about a tough topic, which I'm sure will get more play as we move through the political season.
Grant, thank you so much for having me.